Okay, we are good to go. We've got participants coming in, which is exciting. And I just want to watch this poll. Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to our International Women's Day celebration. It's very exciting to have everybody joining us today. We are joined by these four absolutely fantastic women who are doing really incredible things for animal welfare. And it's a really brilliant opportunity to be able to celebrate women within the field of animal welfare and conservation and all of the things that we are able to achieve together. So just while everybody is joining the webinar, it's been really great to see the interest in this particular webinar. Maybe we'll have to make it a yearly thing. I just want to introduce everybody that we've got. And we do also have a couple of housekeeping rules. So obviously all genders are welcome to this webinar. We do want this to be a very open, honest and accessible space. Speaking of honesty, I will honestly say that I am a little bit nervous. I definitely worry about saying or doing the wrong thing. So hopefully that won't happen, but we might as well start on a very honest footing. So we do have opportunities for our audience to submit questions. So if there is anything in particular that you do want to ask any of our speakers today, then please do feel free to put it in the Q&A. We do also have the chat function if anyone does want to speak about their own experiences. And we do also have a poll at the end, at the bottom there, to be able to close that, to be able to answer that and gain a little bit more understanding about some of these situations as well. So do feel free to answer that question. This webinar is going to be recorded, so if for any reason your internet cuts out or if you've got to go elsewhere, then you will be able to watch this in a few days on our YouTube channel. Do head over and subscribe to Wild Welfare's YouTube channel, and that should pop up in a few days. So we do have four fantastic women, three of which I have had the honour to meet in person, and Farah, hopefully I'll meet you in person one day as well. So firstly, we've got Dr. Farah, who got involved in animal welfare back in 2003 in Baghdad after the last American invasion. She started volunteering in the zoo as a vet, and over the course of 18 months became the deputy director of the zoo. This work involved rebuilding and rehab of the zoo and its animals, as well as caring for exotic pets and also rescuing a collection of horses. And eventually this work has led her to the US, to South Africa, and finally Dubai. And she's been managing the veterinary hospital in Dubai in the past 5 years and counting. Next up, we've got Lorraine, who we all call Lainey, and she has worked in the zoo industry for over 13 years in wildlife parks in the UK and overseas. She specialises in primates, particularly great apes, and she's consulted on a project to bring the first gorillas into New Zealand. She's worked in sanctuaries and conservation organisations across Southeast Asia, Africa and Central America, and she has got very keen interest in conservation. She now works as a zoological consultant specialising in great apes in Western Australia, and she's also authored a children's book about conservation, which is fantastic. And also I must mention that Lainey does volunteer for Wild Welfare in the small amount of spare time that she has, so we're very grateful for that. Next up, we've got Artie. She has been passionate about birds from a very young age, and I met Artie at a conference back in 2018 and was completely struck by how that passion definitely comes across. She does love her birds, which is fantastic. She's conducted a research project on the breeding success and plumage pigmentation of the beautiful scarlet ibis, and she is currently pursuing a master's in conservation biology because she wants to play a bigger role in conservation of endangered species. And then finally, Tung. I met Tung just a few months ago, actually, in Vietnam, and it was fantastic to meet her. She is the sanctuary manager for a bear rescue facility in Vietnam, and her main duties include supervising a team of animal care staff, providing educational development opportunities for her team, which is what Wild Welfare were there to do, and maintaining the highest levels of husbandry and welfare for the bears under her care. She also assists in veterinary procedures, health checks, emergency rescue situations, situations and ensures that the bears are as happy, healthy and thriving as they possibly can be. So thank you to all 4 of you for joining us. I'm very excited to have you all with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so we've got a few questions that I'm going to start off with, and because International Women's Day is a celebration of everything that women are able to achieve, particularly within the animal welfare field, I wanted to start off with a question to all of you. Who are the women that inspire you in your career or indeed in your life? So Tung, do you want to go first?
Okay, thank you very much for having me here for this live webinars. So to answer these questions, honestly, I have a lot of women's let's say inspire me in different times. So one of them is my colleague, now become my big sister and best friends. I met her when I started working in wildlife conservation, and so for me, she's the most dedicated conservationist. She always do her best to empower young conservationists. So the second woman that I much mention is my former boss. We the funny way that we always call her is Turtle Lady. She's has been committed her juice to save the turtle for more than a decade. Of course, all the female animal caretaker who I used to work with, and because they are very hardworking, eager to learn new knowledge and skill, and can take initiative in any jobs. I must say that they all have the same outstanding characteristic, that they always do their best to improve themselves after going through so many up and downs, and always full of energies, and always stay positive.
I think that's a really good observation. We're always striving to do our best. I don't know if any of the rest of you have ever felt like we need to, as women, we need to kind of prove our seat at the table, and maybe that gives us that kind of real determination to actually try our best in every situation. Lainey, what about you? Who inspires you?
So professionally, I'd have to say the great 8 greats. So you've got Dr. Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey and Baruch Gadaks. Yeah, those women are just fantastic and have paved the way for some fantastic ape conservation. But personally, like Tung was saying, it's the women who you work with the most, I think, that inspire you, and the women that are just around you. So I think more often than not, it's my family, so my immediate family. So if I can be as nurturing as my mum, and as confident as my older sister Stacey, and as passionate as my younger sister Jess, then I'll be happy. So yeah, the immediate women around me, I think, are the most inspirational to me.
That's an amazing answer, Lainey, and I definitely have to agree with that. It is really great to look around you and see other women kind of really succeeding and being behind that as well. It's very inspirational. And then Arti, what about you? Who inspires you?
Yeah, I would have to follow Lainey. So for me, I think it's just the people that I work around with. So my colleagues during tough times, no matter what they have going on at home and stuff, they still come to work and they still put in all the extra effort to make sure the animals are fed, taken care of, and have proper welfare standards. So the fact that they have so much going on, but they can still zone it all out and work on the animals is what inspires me. And a lot of them have quite heavy stuff that they've gone through, yet somehow when we are all together, they keep a very, very big smile and we motivate one another. So I find that very inspirational. So those people are what inspire me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Women supporting women. It's a real force for nature, isn't it? And then Farah, what about you? Who inspires you?
Well, I'm gonna have to take everybody's and add on. No, but honestly, I mean, it's all being said. But I have to say, on a personal level, I mean, I have to say my great aunt, whom I grew up in the same house as she was. I mean, she back in the days, and I'm talking back in the 1940s or even late 1930s. I mean, she was the first female teacher in the south of Iraq way back when there was no even role for a woman to do anything. And so she proved herself. She became the first female teacher, and she went on to become an author and a lecturer and all that kind of things. And this is a time back in the 30s where there's nothing happening, right? So I was lucky to grow up in a household where she lived, and you know, I owe her a great deal of even a lot of people ask me, oh, your English is so good, how come? And you come from an Arab speaking country, that kind of thing. I mean, you know, we grow up, she's reading these bedtime stories for us in English, and, you know, Little Prince and all that kind of things. So I owe her a great deal of where I am now, and she's definitely an inspiration. Professionally, I got the pleasure of working with an amazing vet when I was in America back in 2005, Dr. Barb Wolf. I mean, she is an amazing woman, and I learned a lot from her, and I aspire to be her, to be honest with you. I mean, she was just, this is what I want to be when I grow up type person. And I think I'm getting there. I've still got a way to go, but I'm getting there. And obviously everyone I worked with so far, I mean, like everyone else said, and I have to agree that the staff around me at the moment, you know, they come from different backgrounds, different conditions, and sometimes it's really hard going. And then we come to work, everyone's smiling, they're putting 150%, and then some, and not complaining. Most of them are women, actually. I mean, we've all noticed how there's an increase of female veterinarians, female vet nurses. It's like, you know, so it's really inspiring to just, you know, you can't just call in sick because everyone else is feeling worse, but they're coming to work. Okay, let's go, you know. So it's all the people around, for sure.
No, I think you make a really good point there with the women who were really pioneering where they belonged all those years ago, and everyone who's worked really hard to essentially give us the opportunities that we currently have, and then hopefully we can do the same for the next generations. So yeah, very inspiring women out there. Amazing. Well, thanks for all your answers there. So next up, what got you into the industry in the first place? Was there a particular animal that really inspired you? Was there a particular moment in your life, or it might be back to these inspiring women that we were talking about? So Tung, again, start with you. What got you into the industry?
I must say that like it's a real like privilege like to live close to nature, and working with the animal makes me happy. And the how to say, like the most memorable moment that's made me really like pursue my career in this industry is like when I joined do the necropsy for pangolin, and then I saw a lot of like reason behind that. So I just decided at that moment like I have to like pursue my careers in working with the animal.
Realizing you wanted to make a difference, yeah. Brilliant. And what was your route into it, if you don't mind me asking, Tung?
So basically, like I have started like working in this industry since 2014. Initially, like in charge of education activities and some finance and HR and administration stuff for a new established like local NGO that I have to work in the office most of the time. Then that's why I feel very bored, because just sitting in the office. So but when I got a chance to join the rescue, taking care of the animal, doing some vet work, and then like release the pangolin back into the wild, so I figured out that my passion and the real job that make me happy. So since then, I shift to work more with the animals and animal caretakers. So like personally, I think the vet designed my route for me, because like I have taken on different roles, from total conservation officer in charge of the quarantine station, and then to assist animal managers, then like be promoted to a chief animal caretaker like for 5 years, and then like responsible for the ensuring like the smooth and efficiency daily like operations of the vet areas in a sanctuary. Then now like in charge of like the whole sanctuary at Katyn National Park, which is like you know, like as you already like introduced, like so by a mixed team of animal care staff, and then providing like education development opportunity for my teams. So yeah, so I would say that just my fate like design my route. Yeah.
I think pangolins had something to do with it there as well. Brilliant. And then
Yeah.
what about you, Lainey?
So I kind of fell into the animal care industry really. So I studied wildlife conservation at university, and when I was doing my dissertation, I was studying behavioural observations on a group of red ruffalinas at the local zoo. So I was in the enclosure anyway, doing behavioural observations, and they needed a ranger, so basically a keeper, to kind of keep an eye on them over the summer. So I did that because I was there anyway, and then I kind of got hired straight out of uni. Kind of bounced around a bit from the sections in that particular zoo, and then just went from zoo to zoo, kind of gaining more experience as I went, working with different species and just getting a feel for what I was passionate about. And turned out it was apes. Yeah, and then since moving over to Western Australia, I've been moving on to more consultancy, so a lot more remote work, working more with sanctuaries and the odd zoological facility as well. Yeah, doing a lot more of that now, and it's a good workaround for kind of work-life balance as well, so it suits.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, does that kind of meet your needs a little bit more in terms of, 'cause obviously you've got children, so childcare and that kind of thing as well?
It's a lot easier, yeah, doing the consultancy role than actually physically going into the zoo every day, obviously. So yeah, flexibility is the key for me at the minute. My two are still quite young, so 3 and 6 months. So yeah, they still depend on me quite a bit. So
You've got your own little apes to look after.
yeah, which is why you probably might hear the cars going past, because I'm in a little cafe in the corner of Indonesia because my kids are asleep in another room. So apologies for that.
No, that's absolutely fine. And as we said before, being resourceful. And then Artie, what was your route to where you got into, yeah, what was how did you get into the industry in the first place?
So I feel really as though I am not meant to be on this panel, because my background qualifications are nowhere close to everyone else's. I actually have a Bachelor of Arts in journalism. So actually, while I was studying my journalism degree, I kind of wanted to work part-time, and I've always liked animals and wanted to know how it felt working in a zoo. So that's why I joined part-time. And after that, it just kind of became my life. Like, I realized I really like working out in the field, and I don't think I could ever sit still behind a desk and look at a computer. So working with animals were definitely much more fun. And I think working with animals, you don't get to interact much with people. And that was a very big plus for me. And then, of course, helping out with conservation and whatnot. So it all had a greater meaning for me. And then once I graduated, I was just like, no, I'm too invested in this and I need to make some change. So I stuck with it. Yeah.
Is where your true passion lies.
Yeah.
I think it's great because you're highlighting how, so we're often given this narrative that we have to know what we want to do exactly. And, we have this very straightforward route of college and university, and then we go into the job, but sometimes it's not always that linear, is it? So it's nice to know that you can chase your animal welfare dreams whenever you want.
It's just going to take you some time to like figure it out. So it took me a while to figure it out, but you get there.
Yeah, and it's great to see you progress where you've gotten to, which is great. And then Farah, what was your route into the vet world?
Mine was more of an inherited route. I come from a family of veterinarians, so I kind of followed in their footsteps, just kind of by default almost. I mean, I was a kid running around my later on vet school when my mom was working there, my uncle was working there, so I would go there during the summer, help my mom like look after the lab animals, so the mice and the rats and all of that, and then just kind of happened and it grew on me. And my first year I wasn't sure about it. I was like, okay. Second year is like, okay, now this is what I'm doing. And then it just became my life. And after graduation, I wasn't sure again if I wanted to still be a vet, and I lacked obviously hands-on experience, and it's very daunting when you just graduate and they tell you congratulations, you're a vet, and you're like, okay, what do I do now? It's like, so I was doubting my future, and then obviously getting involved with the zoo kind of shaped that into like, okay, this is pretty much what I want to do, and the rest is history. So just
No,
follow.
I think that's a really good point, Farah. Imposter syndrome is a massive thing, isn't it? And I think it impacts us all at one point or another. Definitely
Yeah.
impacts me. Okay, great. So now to the slightly less joyous questions. Have any of you experienced incidences of gender inequality within your career? This is also our poll question. So if we do have any members of the audience who want to answer that poll as well, then we can have a little look. In fact, we've got some answers already. So in our poll at the moment, it's reading that 58% of the audience have experienced incidences of gender inequality within our career. Within your career, so that is actually over half the audience, and that is, yeah, that's quite telling, isn't it? So ladies, have you experienced it in your career? Do you want to go first?
I'll go. That's fine.
All right.
No, go on, go.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not sure, like, is it correct to define the situation that I experienced an incident? However, conservation or animal welfare in Vietnam, particularly like roles that require the field work or manual labor, so in more like male dominant. And also like often female, like especially like younger females are not shown like, let's say, the respect they deserve, and you know, like are undermined in the workplace. So unfortunately, like most of my organizations I used to work for are like comprise like primaries like of male staff. So let's say job opportunities like not equal to both gender. So that's what I experienced like in terms of the inequity like within my career.
Okay. And Lainey, what about you?
So I've actually been really fortunate in my career. So the kind of maybe also I was working in one facility at a time, so Wyndon Zoos, and for all of that time I never really experienced any instances of gender inequality at all. I always felt very well supported and was able to progress as much as where I wanted to in that particular facility. And since stepping away from that environment and going out on my own to do the consultancy stuff, I mainly work in a lot of other countries, mainly in Asia and places like that, and mainly in sanctuaries. And I've got to agree with Tong, those kind of countries may have a slight lean towards the male dominance in those kind of roles. So I wouldn't say that it's been kind of any set incidents, but kind of maybe feeling a bit undervalued in certain places and certain roles. But yeah, culturally, I guess, is a more male dominated area. So yeah, but I feel very, very fortunate to not have had any major issues, and yeah, you get by fine.
Well, that's always really positive. Artie, what about you?
I've had my fair share of gender inequality, but I think that's just like a mindset thing. So like, because the older generation have been brought up that way and they think this is normal. So for them, this is not a big deal, and that's how they just view women. So organizations that generally have older men, then they are more likely to experience such gender inequality, which was what happened in my case. But the positive part is that now there's lots of female getting into this industry and this field. So the women start banding together and we're making positive change. So that's like a good outlook for me right now.
I love that, Artie. I really, really do. Even though we know that there's problems, we can band together, as you say, and focus on the positives and try and create more of that positive change. So amazing, very inspiring. Thank you. And then Farah, what about you?
I've actually been quite lucky, I have to say, in throughout my career, that I haven't necessarily experienced inequality in a way. Maybe partly it's to do with, I have a very kind of a forceful personality, so I didn't really I just went for it, but I have been lucky, like, that I've been surrounded by accepting, open people. The only like way back when incident that I recall, it was when I was a resident, and I mean, being young and small in size as well, which is can be an issue when you're dealing with like large animals. and it was a large animal rotation, and one of the farmers didn't want to take the little girl. And then I actually ended up being a godsend to him, because his goat was struggling to deliver, and she's having a triplet and getting stuck, and dystocia and all of that. So the little girl with the small hands was the answer to avoid surgery. So that kind of changed the narrative for him even there and then. I mean, I was very young. I was like 20, I don't know, 23 maybe or something. So, you know, but that was the only incident that I recall sort of that stayed with me. But I mean, he was just used to, like, I mean, like the lady said, he's used to a society where men do these things. But things changed over time. And now, I mean, yeah, there's more women in the industry than men anyway. But overall, I've been lucky, I think.
That's fantastic to hear. That does actually give me a lot of hope. And yeah, you do actually remind me of my grandmother had a similar incident. She was working for the Women's Land Army in World War II, working with some heavy horses, and she got told by the farmer that she looked as if a stiff breeze might blow her over. But over the course of the next 4 years, she certainly proved him wrong. So again, it's a shame that we do still live in a world where we do have to prove ourselves, but I'm glad that we are able to do that, and hopefully that can mean that that everybody is paying attention to what we are capable of, even if we do have to occasionally prove it.
I actually have to say one thing, that like living in this region, like growing up in Iraq, living in the UAE and Oman, I can't speak for the rest of the region, but these are the countries that I experienced. A matter of factly, the women actually are prioritized over men in many ways, like which is great. I mean, I love being a woman here because you actually get a preferential treatment. You go through the queues quickly. You've got specific lanes for women, like, you know, if you're paying at the till, parking spots, like closer to the entrance. So in a way, I think growing up in a society like that, and then having been working in the Gulf region over the past like 15 years, I really cannot complain being a woman in here, for sure.
That's a really fascinating insight, Farah, and one that I definitely wasn't aware of. So thank you for that. That's really incredible. And that does actually bring us into the next question, which is, does the country or culture in which you reside or in which you work present inequality challenges that you've had to overcome in the past? So Tung, we can certainly ask you about this one, because you mentioned it briefly before.
Yeah, so like as I mentioned above, like the roles that require the field work or manual labor is for male. Like there's a way of like kind of cultures, like especially for the remote area. So yeah, it really like make a kind of gender equality. It's like challenge.
Yeah, no, and as we were speaking before, there was the report that was put out by Wild Act not that long ago about the incidences of sexual harassment in the conservation sector. And the very terrifying statistic from that was that 82.5% of respondents to the survey had experienced some form of sexual harassment in the space of 2 years within Vietnam. And that for me was a massive it was devastating to read that report, actually, for many reasons. I do a lot of work in Vietnam, and obviously Tung, you are from there, so there's a lot of things to consider, how it might actually impact women in particular wanting to go into the industry if they don't feel that they're going to be safe within it. So yeah, it can sometimes feel frustrating, but again, hopefully there's some action points that we can all highlight at the end, and where everyone can make a few changes to hopefully bring forward some more positive experiences for everybody. Did anyone else want to answer that question, or do we want to move on to the next one?
I have something to say, but I don't know if it's like particularly about the country, but I agree with what Tung said. So like within the organization that I worked in and stuff, it basically felt as if the women kept having to prove themselves. And like what Farah mentioned, I was the small child, the small girl. So like they assume that the girls can't lift heavy things. The girls aren't willing to get down and dirty. They don't want to they don't know how to use tools. All these are like basically very naive perceptions that it's built into our society since way back. So what I had to do was to prove to them that I liked it. So when I first joined, there was so much problems being a female because they wouldn't include you in certain things. Like if they had to do some heavy lifting or they had to like make stuff, they wouldn't include you because what's the point? But once you actually show some interest and say like, hey, let me give it a try, and then start picking up things, and then they start getting impressed that you as a female actually like doing the manly stuff, then you get included, and it kind of puts women in a better light for them. And then they understand that they shouldn't judge women for how they look and whatnot. But it still sucks that we have to do that extra step to prove ourselves to people. So that's the same thing.
It really does. I definitely agree, and I've definitely experienced similar. It's one of those things that, yeah, you really do wish that you didn't have to prove yourself, because a lot of men might not have to have gone through that extra step, as you say. But again, if we are able to prove it, then, you know, and being in a physically intensive or a kind of dirty job where you are mucking out animals and all that kind of thing, and caring for them, it shouldn't be limited to whether you are able to lift certain amounts of weights and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot that might still need to change in terms of the way that women are viewed as well. I know some incredibly strong, physically very strong women who can probably lift more weights than some of the men I know. So
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Tom.
Yeah, I just would like to give another like example, saying like the female staff need to like always to like improve themselves and also prove that they can do the things. So let's say we have a female animal caretaker. So all the male staff like refuse to teach her how to use the trimmer to cut grass, and then they all said, okay, no, it's very dangerous, like women should not do that. And then, you know, she decided to ask her husband to teach her how to use a trimmer. Then the next day that she show like she trim all the grass around the sanctuary, and then show the male staff saying, okay, I can do this. And then they, you know, like this is one of the way also inspire the male staff like to, you know, change their minds, and like they should like work like teamwork, support each other, rather than just say, okay, this is for male, this is for females.
Yeah, I actually quite like that, because it goes to show it's the attitude of the human being or that female. I mean, she could have just sat home and complained to her husband, and it was like, oh, the men are not giving me a chance and I can do it, but they're not giving me a chance. And she could have just been moaning about it without an action. But actually I like the fact that she took charge and she learned it, and she just, you know, went and did it. And it's almost in a like is the most glorious passive aggressive way of showing someone something, right? She's not being mean about it. She just said, look, I can do it. So I feel that as women, sometimes the women also, I mean, I probably get crucified for that, but anyway, sometimes some of the women actually don't help the cause itself. What we are trying to take away from that stigma or whatever it is you want to call it. Some women just like to complain about it without taking action or without wanting the solution, but that doesn't help the rest of us. You know, even though I can't really complain much, but obviously I see it, I hear it in the world. So we also need to be like taking action in a positive way, where we can show that, listen, I can do it. Let's move on. Let's not make a big story out of it, right? And that's what your colleague did, and it's great. I think it should be the way.
Definitely. Well, on that note, Farah, we've just had a really interesting question come through the Q&A, if you're happy to answer. They've just asked, they were wondering why Farah considers that the treatments like separate queues, for example, for women are beneficial. So for them, they are just another sign that sexism where men view women as weaker.
No. I don't take it like that. I use those queues all the time. I mean, why would I want to stand in a long queue if I can get faster and get on with my day if I have the opportunity to do that? For me, I don't look at it like that at all. But you see, I mean, that's why it's important that we take it for what it is. It's an opportunity that's afforded to me, irrespective of my gender. I just happen to be, I fulfill the category of that sign that's above the till, for example. whether it's my gender or my height or my whatever it is. Why won't I take an advantage of it? If it's offered to me, I would like to take it as offered to me in goodwill rather than in a demeaning kind of way, whatever that thing is. It's something that I will take advantage of. And, sometimes the queue take longer and people need to get on with their day. So if it's there, I will enjoy it. I will appreciate it. I will say thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and everybody's happy. There's no love lost between anyone. I would certainly not look at it they're differentiating me in a negative way. Absolutely not. At least that's my perspective. I'm not generalizing how the others should feel, but I
think it's because like there's so much disadvantages of being a woman. So like we take our small wins. So that line, it's a win for us, right? You don't have to like make everything about, oh, it's sexist, and then so what? It works for you.
I mean, why? Would you not want to go through the till quicker if on a weekend going to the shops? I mean, it's a nightmare. Sometimes you wait too long, or why would I want to spend like 30 minutes if I can do it in 10 and life is good without impacting. I'm not cutting the queue. I'm not being like a mean human being, boxing people out of their line. No, I'll just wait patiently. But if I'm afforded an opportunity, then I'll be foolish not to take it, regardless of what the opportunity is, irrespective, take the sex out of it completely, or the gender, in this case.
Well, one of the things that I was finding is the different definitions between gender equality and gender equity. So gender equality is something that we obviously all want, to be treated the same, have that same recognition, and there isn't any discrimination based on gender. But what gender equity is doing is going this step further into looking at the different needs of different genders and how to meet them. And it's something that we say about animal welfare, meeting species specific needs. A bird has a different needs, different behavioral needs, and all these other things to a mammal, for example. And it's about providing those choices, those options to be able to meet the needs of any gender that comes along. So I think maybe that's what we're looking at here is there are options for other people based on different genders.
Yeah, I mean, in Europe, when you travel and you get to the airports, and obviously there's EU passport holders, and there is Brexit holders, and there's all that kind of thing. People don't think twice about it when they filter into the right lane that tells them what the passport that they're holding should go for, right? So irrespective of their gender, they fall into the right queue, because that's what the sign said, right? You're an EU passport holder, all other passports go the other way. I know that because I'm all the other passports. Some of the ladies on this lane, we're all on the other passports, right? So we don't think twice about it. I mean, male, female, whatever we go. So this is the same thing. This is an afforded opportunity that we will use and we will take advantage of and just enjoy it for what it is without analyzing it beyond what it is.
I think
and if there is a negative thing about it, then that's up to the person who put the sign and how they thought about it or created that opportunity. I'll just take it as a win, like Arti said.
Okay.
I think another perspective would be that a lot of women would rather stand in a line with women than men. So like they feel more comfortable with other women rather than queuing up with other genders.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so like we've already talked about how there's so much sexual harassment and whatnot. So in that sense, it makes more sense to like get the genders to split,
Yeah, I think the person that asked the question was worried about segregation more than anything, that kind of separation of the genders. But yeah, it's as you say, I guess it depends how you want to take it and the opportunities that it might or might not present. But looking into more of the kind of physical and the biological challenges that we've had to contend with as women, obviously this can get a little bit uncomfortable to answer. So I'm going to put my hand up and say that however embarrassing it is to admit, I have definitely experienced biological challenges. So for example, just a few months ago, I was at a conference in Asia. My period decided to surprise me by coming a week early. I was not prepared. bled and bled through my period protection. I was wearing beige trousers at the time, so that was a slight fashion mishap.
Of course.
And this was in a conference full of men. So it can be incredibly embarrassing, but it's something that, again, we need to talk about. The more that we normalize it, the more that we reduce the stigma from talking about these things, then hopefully the more opportunities that women can gain without having to deal with these things. So has anybody else experienced any of these kind of experiences? Lainey's put her hand up there.
Yeah, so yeah, like you say, women experience biological challenges every month. Some of us handle them fine, some of us don't handle them at all. I'm really fortunate in that respect. I've always handled that particular challenge fine. Obviously, I've been through 2 pregnancies as well, and there's just massive challenges with that. So I'm sure some of the other ladies may have been through that as well. So yeah, all through my pregnancies, well, the first pregnancy I was keeping, so it was very hard physical labor. So there's challenges all the way through that, and the further you progressed, some things you just couldn't do, like you were saying before. You know, we as women couldn't do anything, and they got to a point where your body has changed so much, and it's such a challenge that you physically can't do stuff, or you can, but you shouldn't do the stuff because you're growing a human inside you. So yeah, that is a real challenge where you really want to prove yourself, and you want to show that you can still do all these things, and you know you want to do that for your profession and your career, but you know, obviously you can't. And then of course, giving birth is obviously a massive bodily challenge as well, and afterwards as well. So most women will go back to work, say perhaps 6 months to a year after giving birth, which is still pretty early. Like I can say now, it's pretty early. So your body is still going through massive changes. So I think we as well need to realize that, and everyone else needs to realize that, and kind of maybe make accommodations for that as well. Because you can be breastfeeding your baby for over a year afterwards. So even if you're back at work, your child's in daycare or nursery, you still have to do things to make your body comfortable enough just to work your daily job. So things like pumping breast milk and things to relieve tension, and obviously keep up your milk supply for your baby to actually feed and live. Sorry, there's a car coming around me. Yeah, so even after you've had the baby and you're back at work, everyone thinks, oh, they're back, you know, it's just they're back to normal, they can do anything. You do definitely have to think they're still going through those bodily changes. They've still got massive challenges to contend with just because they're a woman and they can do these things. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm completely feel so privileged to be able to do that for my kids and to breastfeed them. But yeah, it does create a whole host of challenges that maybe people don't really consider until they've been there.
Yeah.
That's a really good insight. Is it one of those things that you found, Lainey, that speaking to maybe other mothers within the industry, have they found that they have been supported in their roles within those kind of extra considerations, such as pumping breast milk and that kind of thing?
So, you know, like I've been really fortunate in the companies or the organizations that I've been affiliated with at the time that I've been pregnant, and they've always been really supportive, but it's always been on a team level. Like my team, my immediate team, were always there. I have a flashlight in my face again. The immediate team were always the ones to say, hey, no, sit down, you know, swap an office day, you need a rest, or, you know, you can't do that. Don't you dare pick up that bag of bark, you know. Like it's always your immediate team to look out for you and have you back. And I think that's a really beautiful thing for your team to kind of support you that much and want the best for you, and know that you're going through those changes and to support you that much. Not to say that the management don't do that as well, but I didn't really have any kind of major dealings with management during those times. It was always my immediate team that helped me through those times. And even now as a consultant, I kind of work on my own, but you need to find that support elsewhere then. So with your family or your friends, or so you just kind of, they say it takes a village, so you need to definitely find your village and they can support you through it.
And forgive me on my ignorance for this, but are there restrictions about what animals you can interact with at certain stages of pregnancy and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, not too many, but there are. I worked with great apes, and I had to stop working with the bonobos after my third trimester. It wasn't a necessity. It wasn't like a doctor recommended, but they are very, very loud, and the high pitch does damage your ears. And I actually had hearing damage from working with the bonobos for so long, and so did a number of other people that I know. So it was actually my team leader, my manager, that said, no, like she can hear everything, or he can hear everything that's going on inside. So yeah, obviously what you don't want is a child coming out with hearing damage, because I'd go into the gorilla house and he would actually kick when the gorillas grumbled, made a really low frequency. So if they can hear the low frequency, I'm pretty sure they can hear that really high pitch frequency as well. So yeah, it just wasn't worth the risk. So it's actually my manager that pulled it out and said, you know, yeah, it's probably too big a risk. And I know other animals like meerkats and cats, obviously with the toxoplasmosis, is obviously Farah could feel this one a lot better than I could. But yeah, there's certain animals that you're not supposed to work with when you're pregnant at certain stages as well.
Okay, that's a really, I never even thought of a baby actually being able to be introduced to the grumbles of a gorilla before they're even born. That's pretty incredible in many ways. Did any of the rest of you want to answer any of those questions regarding biological and physical challenges?
I can add a few things here. One is, you asked if the management, for example, was supportive of obviously pregnancy and all of that. I mean, I don't have any kids, so I can't speak for that. But as a manager of a large team, I mean, here, I mean, that's another thing to kind of, I sound like I'm showcasing the UAE, but I mean, really, we have it good here. But you asked about the management protocols or anything. So here, actually, it's in the labor law that all nursing, like breastfeeding moms, have to have 2 separate half an hour each day for breastfeeding or like milk pumping. That's like, so of the 8-hour days, we have to change their schedule to 7 hours a day. They can take it as half and half, they can take it as a full hour and leave work early, or come to work an hour later. It's in the labor law. Like if we don't do it, we are breaking the law, basically.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of very, very supportive when it comes to moms kind of supporting their children. And so in a way, I feel it's great because it affords us that, like, so it's not only the immediate team that sticks around and rallies around that person, which they do, but also as a management, I want to do it, but I'm also almost forced to do it, to adhere to the employment law and all of that. And so, yeah, it's good. That's just as that. And then on the biological level, I mean, I have to say, again, not experiencing pregnancy and all of that, but I can certainly talk about hormones. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that, you know, you don't always hear about, but nowadays, I think there's more talks about menopause and premenopause and all that kind of things. So that has been a challenge for me in the past few years. I started way earlier than I like to. And then again, growing up in a society where it's not something you talk about, your parents don't sit, you barely sat down and told about the birds and the bees and whatever. So, you know, your mother's certainly not gonna come and talk about that kind of stuff. So learning about all of that, about the changes that I'm going through, and the irritability and the anxiety that those hormones, or lack of for that matter, bring to a work environment when you're trying to manage people with the best of your ability to be kind and compassionate and understanding. But then on the inside, you're just melting. It actually taught me like humility. I've learned a lot about myself and how to handle people while undergoing all those changes and figuring that kind of life out. Because obviously you can't take it out on the people around you. You take it out on your husband, that's okay. But you know, you suck it up. You can't take it to work, but it's with you. You can't leave it home. It's not a problem you don't think about. It's like you physically feel it. And so you learn, well, I had to learn, and still learning, to manage that as it comes. And it's always comes at the worst possible time, like, you know, the incident you described, but on a different level. So yeah, as a woman, we experience these kind of things, and we just have to adapt and learn. And I think nowadays, just talking about it with people around you, it helps.
Yeah.
Like I had to sit my people down and say, listen, you guys, I'm like, my anxiety levels up the roof and you're stressing me out. Like, can we just let's work together, and I need your help. And yeah, you work through it. You know, I sat my boss down and I told him that to, like, you know, you have to face it, and then you move on. And now everyone knows, like, you're having a bad day. Okay, everyone knows you're having a bad day. You got to be honest about it.
Oh,
It's
definitely.
happening. So
No, I think you bring up a great point there, Farah. I've only recently kind of come to understand about the term perimenopause, because you're always kind of taught about menopause.
yeah,
but
no
the
one
time
talks
going
about the
into it-
peri, the bloody peri. No one tells you, right?
Yeah, so I've tried to learn a bit more about it, and thankfully, you know, there's the internet, so you can, and hopefully conversations like this are becoming more and more common. But yeah, I mean, the women in the olden days, how did they even figure out what was going on? It just must have been really difficult to not feel like they even understood what was going on, or if they did, nobody else understood them. So
I now in hindsight can actually understand what my mom was going through just by recollecting her behavior and demeanor that I am now experiencing myself. I'm like, oh, that makes sense, you know. It's like- so yes, that's a challenge in its own way, but yeah, we push on.
definitely, as you say, we push on. Okay, all right, so another question then for you all. What advice would any of you give to women aspiring to work in this industry? Who wants to go first?
I would say that you have to be ready for challenges because it comes with the industry, not just because you're working with animals, but also because you're a woman. But like everyone has mentioned throughout this entire webinar, that you find your village, and then once you find it, it's just like an entire support system. And even in this support system, it doesn't have to be filled with women. You also have guys who actually understand what the women are going through. And yeah, so you kind of just push through it together. And hopefully this new generation that's joining the industry are more well aware of the problems that we face and can actually make changes to how we think as a society, because it's very hard to change the previous what the previous generation have been thinking. It's all inbuilt in their brains already. So right now what we can do is, for the coming generation, we can make our mark and improve our standards.
Brilliant, Artie. Thank you so much for that. Tung, did you have any advice?
I think because based on all the experience, like when I have like females and also male staff working here, so I think my advice is just like take initiative at work. So you can prove that you can do it, like not mention about gender, just like focus on things that you can do, right? So just like understand your work and ask questions if you not know, or and then like find opportunity to improve the process, let's say, and then like ask for more like responsibility if you think like you can do it. And then like of course, like because we are a big team, so just volunteer to help, like if anyone like help need your help. And for sure, like be proactive.
Proactive, that's a good word. Definitely a good word to describe us. Amazing. And then we do have one to bring up, and I think we've touched on it slightly already, but I came across a really interesting quote, which was that the intersection of race and gender shape women's experiences in very significant ways. So is anyone happy with talking about how that might have impacted them?
Sure, I can talk.
Go on then, Farah.
Well, I mean, for me, so like, I mean, like I was fortunate not to experience the inequality in the gender way, but obviously race is a whole different like kind of worms. I mean, being Iraqi, being an Arab from the Arabic world, for that kind of thing, that has been interesting, navigating that part. So I think if anything, I would say I've experienced certain moments of based on or where I come from and prejudice against that than my gender, to be honest with you. So that's, but again, I mean, you just have to have the right attitude about it and just prove yourself that, you know, it doesn't matter where you are, where you're from, what color, what shape, what size, what gender. If you can, you know, you're given a task, you can do it, you do it and do it well. And that's it. No one can say anything. So it really comes down to the attitude. And if you're not good, like, you know, ask to be shown how to do it, or go and learn it. I mean, like I said, I graduated and like I have a degree and I had no idea what to do with it. It's just the way the system works. But then you have a choice. You just sit on it and say, well, I'm a doctor and I don't know what to do, or you go and improve yourself and actually own it, basically. So it's an attitude. You have to have the positive attitude to change things, and then just show everyone that you can, and then they can't say anything, and then they come after you.
Well, yeah, it's difficult to be vulnerable sometimes, isn't it? Especially as a woman, especially if we feel like we constantly have to prove ourselves. Allowing ourselves to be vulnerable sometimes can actually be an empowering thing to do.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah, just opening up and saying, listen, let's talk about it and get it over with, and I need help or something, then it's fine. And like Arti said, I mean, there are lots of good men in our lives that are supportive and they understand, and whether it's colleagues or family or even strangers, like, that they're not all that bad. We need them. Come on, mind you, we do. I mean, as much as people or maybe women don't like to admit that, but I mean, we need our men. What's wrong with that?
No, I think allies are allies of any gender. They're incredibly important to maybe not necessarily rely on, but to certainly offer that support. Definitely.
Yeah, and with gender and race, it's something that's tough, but then at the end of the day, I feel like if you take a stand and try to make changes to it, because like there's a lot of people, they can be your friends and whatnot, but they will still slip in that racial remark or some kind of sexism would be in these jokes that they claim, but they don't know that they are saying something wrong, because it's just casual remarks or jokes that they assume we would be fine with. So unless you stand up for yourself and like tell them, hey, no, that's not the line that we should be crossing and stuff like that, then they would never know, they would never learn, right? So once you start taking that step and people start learning and not making that mistake again, I feel like it's very empowering, and the satisfaction that you went through all of that and you're who you are now, and the people around you have learned something from you. I think that's great.
No, that's really a really great answer, Arti. I do think, yeah, not being afraid to use your voice. We all have a voice, so we should be able to use it. And hopefully women around the world are in a position now to use their voice without fear of negative repercussions, whatever they might be. So yeah, definitely speaking up, using your voice, calling things out when you see them as well. I think you're right in saying so many things come across as jokes, or it's just a bit of banter and things like that, but no, there are some real repercussions to those on many levels. All right, then, I'm very aware that this hour has flown by, but I really wanted to focus on some of the calls to action. So some of the things that we can do to improve, to ensure that women are empowered within this field of working with animals. We obviously are all working towards this better world for animals, and we all obviously all want to work towards a better world for women working with animals as well. So did any of you have any particular actions that you think are really important for anybody of any gender to be able to take to improve the situation?
I think what I mentioned before about standing up for yourself and having a voice, regardless if it was some gender inequality stuff or whatnot, even when it comes to like welfare issues, you just need to have the courage to stand up, because many times we do see people who have been there for ages and have seniority over us, but they make mistakes, or they are very stuck on their ways, and they think that this is how we've always done it, so this is how we're going to be doing it in the future, that kind of a mentality. So to kind of you don't want to be a follower in that sense, because those are negative things and you don't want to follow that. So for me, I would say that no matter what, if you think it's wrong, just voice it up and break that chain. Yeah.
And back it up with science as well.
Yes, of course.
Know what you're talking about, because there's nothing better than bringing the issue, but knowing what you're talking about and getting someone to actually listen, and then like doing it and then realizing, oh, that actually works. Like I hate nothing more than this is how we've always done it. I absolutely detest that principle. And you come into jobs and you inherit all sorts of, this is how we've done it before. I mean, things don't even make sense, silly little things even. But yes, I mean, from me, it's the being honest with the people around you and saying, listen, this is how we've done it, but okay, how about we try it this way? Let's try it. And I'll be the first one to admit if it fails and your way is better, I'll be the first one to go back to your way. And I have done it before. I mean, I've been in this position now for coming on, this is my 6th year. And there were things that in place, I have to agree and admit now that actually, yep, there's a good reason for them to be in place. Let's just go back to the old way. And then there were things that we experimented and changed together, and everyone sees that, oh yeah, actually there's a better way of doing it. For me, it's important to get everyone on board with what you're trying to do by knowing what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then they buy into it. If it works, it's great. If it doesn't, no harm done.
I think for me as well, it's about creating your environment that makes you feel empowered. So what Arti was saying about your people and your tribe and your family, if you create that environment where you're surrounded by people who build you up and who make you feel valued and who know your worth, then you're going to feel that, you're going to take that on, and you're going to be more confident and less anxious to try these things and speak up for yourself, like Arti was saying. And you just need to create that environment for yourself, I think, as well. I mean, obviously, we all talk about, managers need to kind of create these scenarios in the workplace, which is true, but also I think a lot of it falls on ourselves to be able to create that environment for ourselves and surround ourselves with those really positive people. I mean, it doesn't have to be a team either. I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want to have to leave my job for, to create that positive feeling or whatever. You can find it elsewhere. If you don't get that support from your team, find it at home or find it with friends. Just, really make sure that you keep those people around you that build you up and make you feel empowered yourself.
That's it. That's an awesome answer, Lainey. Thank you so much for that. Did anyone else have any other ideas, things that you found have worked in the past, been effective? Well, there were a few things that I kind of came up with just whilst I was researching for this webinar, because I like to be prepared. So obviously making education accessible to women and girls and supporting it as well. So obviously we do need to be able to go into this field knowing, as we were saying, a bit more about what animal welfare is and how we can improve it, and without those educational opportunities then we never really can do that. And also, as you were saying, seeing these women in these positions of leadership and in these positions of animal welfare and making a difference is incredibly inspiring. And then supporting period protection, making that more accessible to those who menstruate. So there's an amazing charity I was reading about in Uganda called the Happy Girls Project, and they really support period protection to make sure that people are able to go to school even whilst they are on their period, which again is those educational examples as well. And then just ways of making field work safer. So in the Wild Act survey, in the write-up of that, one suggestion was actually alcohol is and the consumption of it is something that actually can sometimes put us at risk in terms of there's more harassment when alcohol is involved, and sometimes it is seen as quite culturally a bit of a cultural necessity to blend in. So something that we could do is kind of remove that expectation sometimes, just to make sure that everybody is safer. And then other considerations for field work, because there are some real difficulties that we do need to be able to manage whilst we're working out in the field. So again, period protection over a long period of time, any female medications that you might need to bring into different countries, clothing that is cool, keeps you cool if it's in a hot country but is not derogatory to a local culture, and might not put you in danger, because as we all know, it's of course about what we wear and that kind of thing. So there's so many considerations. And then also sexual harassment training in the workplace, I think can be another one that can really have an impact. But I don't know if any of you had any other considerations that you wanted to talk about before we end the webinar, or have we gone through them all?
You've covered pretty much most.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you once again to all of you lovely ladies for joining us today, for giving up your time. It's been absolutely incredible. Just a quick empowering reminder to all the women who want to work in this industry, who already do, or who just want to support others, to obviously don't be embarrassed to talk about the things that we are conditioned to be embarrassed about. Continue these conversations. Don't be afraid to use your voice, and obviously supporting each other. Once again, thank you to our lovely audience for joining, for answering the poll question and for the Q&A questions as well. Once again, this is being recorded, so hopefully we will be able to put this up on Wild Welfare's YouTube channel in a few days. Thank you all for joining so much. I hope it's felt empowering towards women within the animal welfare industry, and a very happy International Women's Day to you all. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.